Joining me is Adam Creighton, Washington correspondent for The Australian and the paper's former economics editor. He also worked for our Reserve Bank, so he knows a lot about money. Adam Creighton, thank you so much for your time, for getting up so early for us.
Evening,
what exactly
Andrew.
caused this huge sell-off?
Well, certainly, as you said, it was the increase in that core rate of inflation that really shocked everyone. That jumped from 5.9% to 6.3% in the month. So that's the rate of inflation that excludes food and energy, which tends to be volatile. And most economists were expecting something like 0.2 for the month, and it turned out being 0.6 over just 1 month. And so that's why you saw the massive sell-off. The probability that the Fed will lift rates by 100 basis points just next week went from 0% in the morning to about 34% by the end of the day, which is a massive move.
But Adam, here's what I don't get right. It's only a month ago. I knew he was lying at the time, really, or fudging figures. It's only a month ago that Biden claimed that he'd got inflation beaten. Here he is.
I just want to say a number. 0. Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July.
He was just talking zero inflation extra on the month, not over the year. But so what happened? So you got instead we get inflation 8.3% for the year. It's flown over here. Why did that surprise investors so much? And why? And are we in Australia going to get a shock like that as well?
Well, I think investors were lulled into this false sense of security, which was being spun by the Biden administration, that inflation was falling because of the large fall in petrol prices. And sure, there was a 10% fall in the price of petrol over 1 month here. But the problem is, the big problem is that inflation is seeping out into all the other goods and services into the economy. And you've got rent, electricity and gas rising at the fastest rates here in 30 and 40 years. So it's very concerning. And in terms of Australia, well, look, I mean, so far, you'd have to say the statistics back home are matching broadly what's happening here. You're getting faster inflation, you're getting higher interest rates. But of course, the bigger risk back home for Phil Lowe is that you have a very large share of mortgages that are variable rate. And so if our central bank tries to jack up rates by a full 1 percentage point, as the Fed may well do next week, then that has a much bigger effect on spending throughout the economy.
Right. I was going to ask you whether I should be selling shares. Just asking for a friend here, but maybe we shouldn't be giving financial advice on here. But I don't know, Adam. These are really worrying days. I don't know that anyone really knows where the economies are going.
No, look, I think that's true. And what's interesting is central banks are armed with this theory that the higher their interest rate, their short-term interest rate, the lower inflation is going to be. But I hasten to add, it's just a theory, and there's actually no empirical support really supporting it. So it's trotted out there like it's a certainty. But so my point is that what we're going to see around the world is the central banks use their one theory to jack up interest rates to try to crush inflation. And it may not even crush inflation, but what it will crush is spending and the ability of governments and businesses and households to service their debts. That will certainly go up. And so indeed, I agree with your prognosis. It is extremely uncertain times, and it is worrying.
And Bant, I've been amazed by a new tactic of Biden's Democrat Party to actually run ads for Republican politicians, pretending to attack them, but in fact doing it in a way that promotes them to Trump supporters. They've so far spent more than $20 million on this strategy. Here's a typical ad that they've done for one Republican. Have a look.
Meet Bob Burns, the ultra-conservative candidate for Congress.
I'm also the only pro-Trump, unapologetic conservative. I'm against pathway to citizenship for illegal aliens. I want to build the wall, and I'm an America First candidate.
Burns follows the Trump playbook on immigration, the border, and guns. If we send Bob Burns, the
unapologetic conservative,
to Congress, New Hampshire is gonna get burned. Democrat service responsible for the content of this ad.
To remind viewers, that ad was actually paid for by the Democrats, not the Republicans. Explain the strategy to us, Adam.
Well, basically, the Republican primaries have become quite competitive since Donald Trump came on the scene. In the old days, the party would just anoint someone, and that's who their voters would have going into the campaign. And so now it's much closer, and so Democrats have decided, at least the campaign arms have decided, that they would prefer to compete in the general election with these so-called more extreme candidates, the MAGA candidates. And so, as you pointed out, they have tipped tens of millions of dollars. And actually, it's worth pointing out, it's not 20 million, it's 52 million. For some reason, in that Washington Post analysis, they left the lead. They left the lead in the 5th paragraph, not the 1st paragraph. If you include Illinois, which of course is a Democrat stronghold, that state spent 32 million, just that state. So it's about 52 million, and that is unprecedented. I mean, these are large sums of money, and it's working. It's working. We just saw last night here in America, in New Hampshire, one of the last Republican primaries, the so-called MAGA candidate looks like he's winning by 400 votes. Now, you can't say that the campaign by the Democrats hasn't helped in that state.
No, well, it probably does. Adam Creighton, I'm out of time. Thank you so much indeed for getting up for us.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.